Human Evolution by Robin Dunbar. Chapter 5. The Second Transition. The Homo habilis was discovered in East Africa in 1962 by the archaeologist Louis Leakey. It is classified as an Australopithecine, and his importance is due to the fact that it was the first hominid to use primitive stone tools. It appeared around 2.3 million years ago. Even though it was more intelligent than his ancestors, it still had a reduced brain volume and short legs, and lived in Africa throughout all its existence. The Homo ergaster is posterior to Homo habilis. It lived between 1.9 and 1.4 million years ago and was the first exodus out of Africa. He created the Acheulean hand axe, a stone tool that existed for over a million years and hardly changed. This hominid was distinguished by a bigger brain size, the remodeling to the skeleton, and longer legs adapted for striding gait. He was also defined by a nomadic style that differentiated him from the Homo habilis. Homo erectus was the first hominid that lived in Asia, and there were found bones from various specimens that then were combined into one. The first specimen found that existed is dated around 1.8 million years ago. It had slight but noticeable differences from the Homo ergaster, but still used the Acheulean axe as principal tool. The main trouble that its species faced, along with Homo ergaster, was that it needed a bigger food intake, which traduces into a bigger amount of time needed for feeding. This map shows the principal settles of each species, and as we can see, both Homo habilis and Homo ergaster were found in Africa, but Homo erectus was found all around the Eurasia. The cost of larger brains. This graphic shows the brain increase from Homo habilis to Homo ergaster and from Homo ergaster to Homo erectus. In the first one, the brain volume increase was from 280 cubic centimeters, which is a total from 58.2%. And from Homo ergaster to Homo erectus, the brain increase was 170 cubic centimeters, which is a total from 22%. This growth on brain size required significant energy to maintain. Investigators say that Homo habilis spent 20% of total body energy on his brain, and by calculations it showed up that Homo ergaster spent 22.4% of total body energy on his brain, which is a 4.5% extra energy intake. And finally, Homo erectus spent 7% extra energy intake overall. This extra energy intake traduced into more time spent feeding, as we can see in this table, where at first the time spent feeding is very reduced and then increases to more than 80%.
We now are going to ask how did early Homo do to find ways to circumvent the time budget bottleneck. The following are some possible solutions. Saving some resting time. The appearance of Homo ergaster in Africa around 1.8 million years ago coincided with a major climate event that produced a fall in average global temperatures. Temperature across tropical Africa fell by around 2 grades. That fall on temperatures would have reduced ergaster resting time demand by about 2.5 percentage points across to the resting time equation. Travel time is another possibility for saving time. Early Homo was taller than the Australopiths. As you can see, leg length was 0.88 meters for early Homo and 0.62 meters for Australopiths. This gave Homo a 41% of advantage. That could cut travel time to 11.5% for a saving of 5 percentage points. However, everything suggests that they were more nomadic. This saving probably had more to do with facilitating longer day journeys. To explain savings on feeding, Peter Wheeler and Leslie Aiello proposed the expensive tissue hypothesis in 1995. Fats and the brain are equally expensive in terms of energy consumption. They suggest that at some point, hominids switch energy allocation from one expensive form of tissue, the gut, to another, the brain, allowing an increase in brain size at no extra cost. Hominids did this reorganization by improving diet quality, increasing the rate of nutrient extraction to compensate for the reduced gut size, producing an increase in energy availability for the larger brain. This produces the modest saving of 5% points in terms of feeding time. Summarizing, if we add the points saving from the resting time plus the ones from the travel time plus the ones from the feeding time, that will bring the time budget overspent for Ergaster and Erectus down from 30 and 34 percentage points respectively to 17.5 and 21.5 percentage points. The following graph shows the increase in total percentage in time budget along human evolution. The digestive diet we were talking about before on the basis of the expensive tissue hypothesis was assumed to be meat. It's a richer food source than most plant foods. It contains micronutrients that the vitamin niacin B3 crucial for brain development. However, it's not an easy solution because raw red meat is not easily digested by primates. Harvard anthropologist Richard Wrangham has said that cooking might have solved the energy gap in human evolution by increasing the digestibility of meat. This suggestion is supported by three key archaeological observations. Appearance of the genus Homo coincides with a reduction in the size of the teeth and jaw, no longer necessary for pulverizing coarse vegetable foods, the first appearance of the use of fire, essential for cooking food, and the sudden increase in brain size. There have been many attempts to claim that Ergaster and Erectus hunted with spears. For doing overall throw, various anatomical elements have to come together to provide that capacity. Construction of the Nariocotom's boy's shoulder girdle has been used to place the evolution of throwing well before 1.5 million years ago. Until we have more convincing evidence, we can probably dismiss claims for regular weapon-based hunting at such an early date as speculative. What cooking might have done for early Homo? Based on human pattern, cooking would have reduced their feeding time demand from 57 to 46.5% for Ergaster and from 58.5 to 47.8% for Erectus, savings of 12 and 9 percentage points respectively. For meeting with the leptin deficit after considering cooking, they could have increased the portion of meats or underground storage organs in their diets. The figure of Erectus is actually impossible. They would have had to be totally dependent on meat. Homo ergaster molars are a lot smaller than those of the robust Australopiths, but they are not, in fact, that much smaller than those of the gracile Australopiths. Impression of smaller teeth in Homo has been due to the fact that such data are presented relative to body mass. It's not relative molar size that determines the chewing area available, but absolute molar size. The gain is much smaller than has been assumed. In reality, the increase in brain size at this point in hominid history is quite modest compared to what came later. The question is, if we use cooking to explain this small brain size increase, what will be left to explain the much larger increase in brain size that comes with archaic and anatomically modern humans? Also, there's no reason why early Homo might not have increased its meat intake somewhat even without cooking it. What we have to ask is if it would have mattered that they were losing a third of the possible nutrients available when they ate meat. Cooking will have produced a very modest saving, so modest that it's not sure that it would have been worth the effort of lighting the fire. If Wrangham was right and Homo ergaster and Erectus cook meat, there must be a lot of archaeological evidence for fire. Fire provides heat and light, and it was crucial to invade high-latitude lands. The oldest convincing evidence for fire dates to around 1.6 million years ago in Kenya. After this, nothing until 1 million years ago when there's sporadic evidence for fire. Earliest case from this second phase were 60 pieces of chair bone that were found in South Africa as the first evidence for deliberate cooking. More evidence of burnt bones and burnt wood and seeds had been found during this time. Evidence for fire use after 400,000 years are abundant from sites widely distributed across the old world continents like Israel, Germany, England, Spain, or France.
Change in the use of fire. Archaeologists found a big amount of hearths dated around 0.4 and 0.5 million years ago compared to before. It was suggested that probably the fire was mastered around 400,000 years ago and could be maintained and rekindled at will. Even though there were found hearths dating from more than 0.5 million years ago, these were probably caused by natural reasons like lightning. Large hearths might require cognitive ability for coordination and even language to maintain. Cooking. At first, it was thought that cooking was a really important feature into early Homo diet. But after this, it was found that brain large enough to support cognitive abilities and language needed for cooking are unlikely to predate the appearance of archaic humans around 500,000 years ago. In addition, there is evidence of cooking much earlier, and cooking did not become a regular feature until after 400,000 years ago. In conclusion, we can say that cooking was not regular enough to have an impact on early Homo diet.
How laughter solves the bonding problem. Social time is directly related to community size, and the community size of early Homo would have doubled the growing time compared to Australopithecus. In primates, grooming is very much one-to-one activity, so it is impossible to groom several individuals at the same time. This problem is still with us. It equivalates to the kind of physical affection that we share in more intimate moments, something we can do with several people at the same time. The amount of time of the day that make monkeys and apes spend in social grooming seems to reach the 20% of it, and that sets a limit on the size of the group that can be bonded at more or less 50 individuals. Early Homos had to make room for more grooming time, or they had to find a more effective way of bonding to increase community size above these limits, to be able to bond it in the same amount of time. Primates rely on social grooming to trigger endorphin activation in the brain, which appears to be critical for bonding. But there is just one behavior that might allow several people to be groomed simultaneously. This is laughter. Humans share this behavior with apes. Ape laughter consists in a series of exhalation-inhalation sequences, whereas humans consist of only a series of exhalations, without accompanying inhalations. Apes do not empty their lungs, but so humans. This stress on the chest muscles triggers endorphin activation, so it might be possible to use laughter as a form of grooming at a distance. So this means that endorphin effect is in several individuals at the same time. Laughter is more likely to occur in group. So the question is, how many more people can be influenced by laughter than by grooming? So to solve this question, Guillaume Desaint did an experiment in which recorded the size of social groups sitting around a table who were obviously together in a group. In second place, recorded the size of conversation groups, and last, the number of people actively laughing at the same time. So the result, in fact, was that only 3 members of the group, of each group, were implicated on laugh. Show that laugh is 3 times more effective than it is grooming. If laughter supplemented grooming and was 3 times more efficient than just grooming on its own, then this would be reduced to, in the case of ergasters, to a 6.2%, and in the case of erectus, to 7.8%. Why did brain size increase in early Homo? Most widely accepted explanation was the climate variability model. This theory explains that the increase on the brain size seemed to occur at the same time when climate was particularly unstable. This means that hominids had to evolve a larger brain to cope with the challenging environment. Another version of this hypothesis relates cognitive changes to production of better quality of tools. It could be explained or supported by the fact that European birds that remain at high latitudes through the winter have significantly larger brains than those species that migrate.